He told me we didn't need a divorce. Then he zipped up his suitcase, picked up his bags, and walked out the front door to where she was waiting in the driveway. She was 21 years old. He was 46. And I was the wife he had decided was too inconvenient to legally leave but too boring to stay for. My name is Rachel Mercer. I am 39 years old. I have been married to my husband Thomas for 13 years. And on a Tuesday morning in late September, I stood at the top of our staircase and watched him carry 3 bags out of the home we built together, without a single conversation, without a single apology, and without what most people would consider the basic human decency of looking me in the eye when you end someone's life as they know it. I want you to understand something before I go any further. I did not scream. I did not beg. I did not throw anything or cry in the doorway or call his mother. I stood at the top of those stairs with my coffee in my hand and I watched, because in the 6 months before that morning, I had already done everything I needed to do. Thomas thought he was leaving. What he did not know was that I had been preparing for his exit far longer than he had been planning it. But I am getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where this really began. 13 years ago, I married Thomas Mercer in a small ceremony by the lake where his parents used to take him as a child. It was September then, too, which I have since decided is either a beautiful coincidence or the universe's idea of a dark joke. He was 33, already building his name in commercial real estate, already the kind of man who walked into rooms and immediately became the center of them. I was 26, working as a project coordinator at a nonprofit, still figuring out exactly who I was. We were different in the ways that feel exciting when you are young and in love, and exhausting when you are older and the novelty has worn down to the bone. For the first several years, we were good, not perfect, but good. We bought a house. We traveled. We built a life that looked, from the outside, like exactly what a life is supposed to look like. Then, about 3 years ago, something in Thomas shifted. I noticed it the way you notice a slow change in weather, not a sudden storm, but a gradual cooling. He started working later. He started caring differently about his appearance, the kind of caring that is not about health or confidence, but about being seen by someone specific. He bought new clothes he never showed me. He started having his phone face down on every surface in our home, all the time, casually, consistently, as though it had always been that way. I did not say anything for a long time. I told myself the stories we tell ourselves when we are not ready to know the truth. He is stressed about work. He is going through something. We just need to reconnect. I suggested counseling twice. Both times he said we were fine. We were not fine. 18 months ago, I found the first charge I could not explain. It was a small amount, a restaurant I did not recognize on a Tuesday night when he had told me he was meeting a client. I might have let it go as a mistake if it had been the only one. But when I looked more carefully at our joint account statements, I started to see a pattern. Dinners on nights he came home late. A hotel stay during a weekend he told me was a real estate conference. A jewelry purchase in March. I never received jewelry in March. I need to be honest with you about what I felt in that moment, because I think people expect the story to go one way, and sometimes it goes another. I did not feel devastated. I think I had known on some level for a long time. The way your body knows something is wrong before your mind will let you say it out loud. What I actually felt, sitting at our kitchen table at 11 o'clock at night with those bank statements in front of me, was something closer to clarity. Like a fog I had been living inside for years had finally, quietly, lifted. I closed the statements. I made myself a cup of tea, and I thought very carefully about what I was going to do next. The following week, I called a family law attorney named Sandra Holloway. A colleague of mine had used her 2 years earlier during her own divorce and had described her as someone who was not interested in drama, but was extremely interested in justice. That description turned out to be entirely accurate. I sat in Sandra's office on a Wednesday afternoon and I laid out everything I had. The statements, the dates, the charges I could not account for, the hotel receipts I had photographed on a night Thomas left his jacket downstairs. The car payments I had traced to an account opened in his name alone, funded by transfers from our joint savings, for a vehicle I had never seen parked in our driveway. Sandra listened to all of it without interrupting. When I finished, she folded her hands on the desk and looked at me with the calm of someone who has seen this story many times before and knows exactly where the leverage is. "The car financing alone is significant," she said. "He used marital funds without your consent to benefit a third party. In this state, that qualifies as dissipation of marital assets. Combined with the undisclosed transfers, we are looking at a very strong position for you in court." "He has not asked for a divorce," I told her. "He has not said anything about any of this. He is just pretending everything is normal while slowly moving money and preparing to leave." Sandra nodded. "That is actually more useful to us. It means he is not on guard. Let him keep pretending. In the meantime, we prepare." And so we did. Over the next several months, Sandra and I built a case so thorough that by the time Thomas finally decided to have his grand departure, every single move he thought he was making freely had already been documented, cataloged, and placed neatly into a legal file with his name on the cover. I want to tell you about those months because they were not easy. I still came home to the same house. I still cooked dinners. I still sat across from Thomas at the kitchen table and asked about his day. And every time I did, I thought about what Sandra had said in our last meeting. Let him keep pretending. Every day he pretends is another day we prepare. Thomas never once suspected. I think he had decided, somewhere in the comfort of his certainty, that I was simply the kind of woman who would not cause problems. I had spent 13 years being steady, reliable, accommodating. I had put my own career on a slower track to support his. I had managed our home, our finances, our social life, with such quiet competence that he had come to see it the way people see clean water. Essential, always there, not something you think about until it is gone. He had confused my steadiness with passivity. He had mistaken my silence for ignorance. And that mistake would cost him more than he had ever imagined possible when he was standing in that driveway with his girlfriend waiting and his suitcase in his hand. Let me tell you about Sienna. Sienna Walsh was 21 years old. She worked as a marketing intern at the firm that managed Thomas's commercial properties. She was, by all visible accounts, a young woman who had genuinely believed whatever Thomas had told her about his marriage, which I later learned was a version of events in which I was cold, distant, and we had not been truly together in years. The story that men like Thomas always tell. The story designed to make the other person feel like they are not breaking anything, just stepping into a space that was already empty. I do not blame Sienna. I did not then and I do not now. She was 21. He was 46. The responsibility for what happened in our marriage belongs entirely to the man who made the vows. On the morning Thomas left, he came downstairs with his last bag and found me in the kitchen. I was dressed. I had my coffee. I looked, I imagine, entirely unbothered. "I think it is better if we do this cleanly," he said, setting his bag by the door. "No lawyers, no court. You keep the house for now, we sell it in a year and split the equity, and I cover the mortgage until then. Simple." He said it like he was offering me something generous. Like he had spent time crafting a solution that was fair to everyone, meaning primarily himself. "And the divorce?" I asked. He shifted slightly. "I was thinking we could just separate for now. A legal divorce is expensive and messy. There is no reason to rush it." There it was, the thing I had been waiting to hear him say out loud. He did not want a divorce because a divorce would require full financial disclosure. A divorce would mean lawyers looking at accounts. A divorce would mean someone asking where the money went, why certain transfers were made, what that car loan was doing on a joint line of credit. He wanted to stay legally married to me because being legally married to me protected him from the legal consequences of everything he had done while being legally married to me. I set down my coffee cup. "Okay," I said. He blinked. "Okay. Go, start your new life. Don't worry about any of this." He stood there for a moment, clearly expecting something else. A fight, tears, an accusation. He had rehearsed the difficult version of this conversation, and I had refused to perform it. "You are being very mature about this," he said finally. "I am trying to be," I told him. He picked up his bag. He walked to the door. And as he stepped outside into the cool morning air where Sienna was parked at the end of the driveway in a white car I now knew everything about, he turned back one last time. "I do want you to be happy, Rachel. I hope you know that." I looked at him standing there in the doorway of a home. He thought he was leaving on his own terms, and I felt something very quiet and very final settle inside my chest. "I know," I said. "Enjoy the next few weeks, Thomas." He frowned slightly at that. "What does that mean?" I just smiled and closed the door. I listened to the sound of his car leaving. Then I picked up my phone and sent one text to Sandra Holloway. 3 words. He just left. Her reply came in under a minute. "Filing tomorrow morning. Everything is ready." I want to tell you what the next 14 days looked like, because they were nothing like what Thomas expected and everything like what I had planned. 3 days after he left, Thomas's business partner called him about a discrepancy flagged in their shared property management account. An audit had been quietly requested by a third party. Specifically, by me, through Sandra, in coordination with a forensic financial analyst named Dr. Carol Reyes, who had spent the previous 4 months building a document trail so precise it could survive any courtroom in the country. On day 5, Thomas received the divorce petition. Not a request, not a suggestion. A filed, court-stamped petition, which included an attached motion detailing 18 months of undisclosed asset transfers, the unauthorized use of joint credit to finance a vehicle for a third party, and a formal claim of dissipation of marital assets totaling, when Dr. Reyes had finished her analysis, just under $240,000. I know the exact moment he read it, because he called me 11 minutes after the courier delivered it. "What is this?" His voice was different from how it had been in the kitchen that morning. The easy confidence was gone. What I heard instead was the sound of a man who has just realized the ground he was standing on was never as solid as he thought. "It is a divorce petition," I said. "You said you did not want lawyers, but I decided I did." "Rachel, this number, 240,000, that is insane. That is not, you cannot just." "Thomas," I kept my voice very even. "I have been working with a financial attorney and a forensic accountant for 6 months. Every transfer, every charge, every account you opened without my knowledge is documented. Dr. Reyes is very thorough." Silence. "The car loan," I continued, "is particularly well documented, as is the hotel stay the weekend of the Clearwater Conference, which, interestingly, no record of your attendance exists in the conference registration system." More silence. "You have 2 options," I said. "You can respond to the petition through your lawyer, in which case everything goes to court and becomes a matter of public record, including the financial disclosures your business partner will be very interested in. Or you can instruct your lawyer to contact Sandra Holloway and accept the settlement terms we have already drafted." "You already drafted settlement terms?" 3 weeks ago," I said. "Sandra is efficient." I heard him exhale, the long, slow exhale of a man deflating. "What are the terms?" he asked. "The house stays in my name. Full transfer, no sale, no split. My share of the retirement accounts plus restitution for the dissipated assets, my legal fees, and a clean, uncontested divorce finalized within 60 days. "That is everything," he said. "You are asking for everything." "I am asking for what was already mine," I said. "I am simply being precise about it." He tried, over the following days, to negotiate. His lawyer reached out to Sandra twice with counter-proposals that Sandra described to me as wishful thinking. Thomas called me twice more. I did not answer either time. Sandra had told me early on that the moment you begin negotiating against a strong position, you weaken it. I had a strong position. I intended to keep it. On day 11, Thomas's lawyer called Sandra and told her his client was prepared to accept the terms. On day 14, Thomas signed. I remember sitting in Sandra's office that afternoon, watching her set the signed agreement on the desk between us, and feeling something I did not entirely expect. Not triumph, not the sharp heat of victory that I think I had imagined in the early days, when I was sitting at the kitchen table at midnight with those bank statements and a cold cup of tea. What I felt was quieter than that. It felt like finally exhaling after holding your breath for a very long time. "Congratulations," Sandra said. "You handled this exceptionally well." "I had a good lawyer," I told her. She smiled. "You also had the good sense to come to me before he knew you were coming. That made all the difference." She was right. That was the thing Thomas had never understood about me, not in 13 years of marriage. He had seen my patience as indifference, and my silence as acceptance, and my steadiness as the absence of strategy. He never once considered that the woman who had quietly managed every corner of his life might be equally capable of quietly managing his exit from it. In the months until it became public in the legal proceedings, and that once she understood what he had actually been doing, she wanted nothing further to do with it. I learned that Thomas's business partner had initiated his own review of their shared accounts after the audit flagged irregularities, and that the professional consequences of that review were still unfolding in ways that had nothing to do with me and were entirely of Thomas's own making. I learned from someone in our neighborhood that Thomas had called the house twice in the months after the settlement, and both times I had not been home. I did not call back. There was nothing to say that the signed agreement had not already said more clearly than any conversation could. And I learned, slowly and in ways I had not expected, what it felt like to live inside a life that was entirely your own. I painted the living room a color I had wanted for 3 years, and Thomas had always vetoed. I started running again, something I had given up in the early years of the marriage when our schedules made it difficult. I had dinner with friends I had seen less and less of in recent years, women who sat across from me in restaurants and said things like, "You seem so different," and I understood exactly what they meant, because I was. My colleague Diane, who had been the one to recommend Sandra to me, took me out for coffee 6 months after the divorce was finalized and asked me how I was doing, the real version of the question, not the polite one. "I am good," I told her. And I meant it in the fullest way, not the way you say it to end a conversation, but the way you say it when you have taken stock and the numbers actually add up. "Were you ever scared?" she asked. "During all of it, when you were building the case and he still didn't know?" I thought about it honestly. "There were nights," I said. "There were nights when I wondered if I was being too cold about it, too calculating, whether I should have just confronted him and let it be messy and human." "What made you stay the course?" I wrapped both hands around my coffee cup. I thought about what I actually wanted, not what felt satisfying in the moment, what I actually wanted when it was over. And what I wanted was to be standing on solid ground, not to have won an argument, not to have made him feel something in a kitchen. I wanted the house. I wanted financial security. I wanted my life back in a form I could actually live in. Diane nodded slowly. "And you got it." "I got it," I said. "There is one more thing I want to tell you before I close this story, because I think it is the most important part, more important than the legal strategy, more important than the settlement terms, more important even than the morning I watched Thomas carry his bags out the door. The most important thing happened 8 months after the divorce, on an ordinary afternoon in my living room, the one with the walls the color I had always wanted. I was sitting by the window with a book, and the light was coming in at that particular angle it gets in the late afternoon in autumn, and I realized I had been sitting there for almost an hour and I had not thought about Thomas once. Not about what he was doing, not about who he was with, not about any version of the life we had or the life he had walked into. I had simply been reading my book in a room that was mine, in a house that was mine, in a life that was mine, and it had been enough, more than enough. He had told me I did not need a divorce. He had said it like he was doing me a favor, like he was simplifying things, like his version of events was the only version that needed to exist. What he meant was that he needed me to stay legally bound to him while he built something new with someone else. He needed my patience, my silence, my willingness to accept whatever arrangement he handed me, one more time, one last time, to protect him from the consequences of everything he had done. What he got instead was a woman who had spent 6 quiet months making sure that, when he finally walked out that door, every single thing he thought he was leaving behind was already protected, accounted for, and entirely out of his reach. Thomas Mercer walked away thinking he had outmaneuvered me. He walked away certain that I would stay in the role he had written for me, the loyal, steady, uncomplaining wife who would wait patiently at the edge of his life for whatever he chose to offer. He forgot one thing. For 13 years, I had been the one keeping track of everything. The accounts, the schedules, the details he never bothered to learn because he knew I would handle them. I handled them one last time, thoroughly, precisely, on my terms. And now I sit in my living room in the late afternoon light, and I read my book, and I think about nothing except what is on the page in front of me. That is what winning actually looks like. Not a scene, not a confrontation, not a moment where he finally understands what he lost. Just a quiet afternoon in a life you built back for yourself with your own hands on your own ground. If you have been in a place like the one I was in, if you have been sitting at a kitchen table late at night looking at numbers that do not add up, feeling the slow withdrawal of someone who is supposed to be your partner, I want you to hear this. Your patience is not weakness. Your silence is not surrender. The moment you decide you are done being managed is the moment everything changes. You do not have to be loud about it. You do not have to be dramatic. You just have to be ready. I was ready. And if this story felt like yours in any corner of it, if something in it gave you the language for something you have been feeling without words, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment below. And if you want to be here for the next story, subscribe and hit the bell. I will see you there.